Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back. We're continuing on with the design from the previous lesson, and now we're going to break down a little bit more on this top portion. In the last video we created this top area here and all these custom shapes. In this video we're going to add our custom icons in. We'll add the status bar at the top, and we'll try to break down this profile picture as well and show you how that's done. Let's start with this status bar at the top here, and Sketch will allow you to do that with some pretty cool tools here. So I'm going to go to Insert, go to iOS UI Design Symbols, and where do they hide that stuff? So bars, and I believe it's status, and what we want is a white one. Let's go ahead and put that right here. I'm going to resize that, bring it across. And one way you can get this centered, so with this selected, the status bar selected, I'm going to hold down Shift and select my main background. I'll come up here to the alignment tools and just align that horizontally, and it did jump over a little bit. So there we go, and let's add some text here for the title. I'm going to hit T for text, and let's just type this out. There we go. So now you can also, if you click and drag this around, the smart guides will kind of help you out and show you when that's centered. So you'll see that it kind of snaps to that red line that shows the centering from top to bottom, or from left to right. So I'll stick that right about there. And if this wasn't the right size, you can come over here to the inspector, change your font family, change your font size. One of the fonts I like to use is Avenir Next, and the reason I like to use that, at least in this case for some plain text, is that it's got a lot of weights. And you've got a lot of different options here, from regular on up to heavy italic. Right now I just have this set to medium and size 16. Now this does look a little bit thicker, so I could come in here and maybe say demi bold. We could change this to maybe a gray. Have that match up a little better. That looks good. Alright, so now let's go ahead and place these icons that we downloaded earlier. So for this guy, I'm going to double click. This is the one I downloaded from the Noun project. I'm going to go ahead and select this, crop it, and I want to flip this the other way, so let's go ahead and turn that around. Now I want to keep a copy of this just in case I need to come back to it later, so let's go ahead and hold down Alt. I'll click and drag out a copy, and it looks like that's underneath my artboard, so let's go over here to the Layers panel. This one is selected. I'll click and drag that all the way up to the top. Let's bring that onto here. Let's change the color to white. So I'll click on Fills, or Add a Fill. Drag this up to white. Let's get it resized down to about the size that we want. And I'm just going to use my arrow keys to kind of move it around. Put it right about there. Let's do the same thing with this settings icon. I'm going to double click, and let's get this cropped if we can. And I'll hold down Alt, drag out a copy. Same thing, it's behind. Let's go ahead and in the Layers panel drag that up to the top. Bring this down into our working area and add a fill. We want this to be white, and then resize. Alright, no big deal. Let's get this in place. And one little attention to detail is I would try to get these guys all kind of centered horizontally. So that's with all three selected. I'm going to come over here to my alignment tools, and we're going to align layer to the middle. All three of those are lined up now. I'll move it up just a little bit. You could take this a step further. Let's go ahead and click our arrow, and let's say how many pixels of space do we have on the left, and let's mimic that on the right. So with Alt held down, I've got 24 pixels of space. You could change that to something else, 25 if that's what your gutter is there. Let's come over here to our settings icon. I'm going to hold down Alt. It looks like we're at 31.43 right now. Let's move that over, get it to 25. And there we go. Okay, so now let's bring in our camera icon. Same deal with this. Alright, there we go. And I'm going to use the same Same measurement for the gutter here. So with Alt selected, let's move this over to about 25. And I want the same on the bottom. So let's hold down Alt. There we go. And let's change this to like a grayish type color. I think something like that. I think what's really going on here though is some transparency. So I'm going to copy the color here, D2, D2, and I'm just going to drop the opacity down a tiny bit. Let's go down to like 80%. Let's do the same thing with the settings icon. With that selected, I'm just going to paste in the color here. That's the same, and let's change the opacity to 80%. I'm going to skip the arrow actually because that actually looks white. Alright, so now let's start with this profile picture. I'm going to hit O for oval on my keyboard. Let's get to about the middle. I'm going to hold down Alt-Shift, drag out a circle till it's about the size of this oval over here. That might be a little bit bigger, but no worries. And I'm going to apply this white border around the outside. So as of right now, we have a fill of gray. The fill doesn't really matter. We're going to replace that with a picture. Let's go ahead and add a border. And then you'll notice that you have three options here for the border. You've got inside, you've got middle or center, and then you've got outside. And what we want is outside. We also want this to be white. And then let's bump it up, the thickness here, until it matches with this guy over here. So maybe about 5. You also have the option to do point value, so I could come in here and say 5.5 if you needed just a hair more. I'm going to leave it at 5. Good there. And I think I'm going to shrink it down just a little bit overall. Let's get that centered again. Alright, now a couple different options for photos. You can come up here to Data, go to Sketch Data, and tap on Faces. And this will pop in a photo here as well. And then just to be able to see that, you'll want to come over here to the inspector and change that to fit. That way it matches up. Now I don't want to do anything boring for this, so let's get an image that is a little more interesting. Just went and saw the movie Onward. Let's get the Manticore. So I can grab this guy, copy image, and I'm just going to paste that right over the top here. Let's resize. What I want is this face right here to fit right in there. That might be a bit of a tall order. So we'll shrink it down, and what we're going to want to do is, with this guy selected, I'll come over here to my layers panel. I'm going to hold down Shift and select our oval, and then I'll come up here to mask, click that, and that's going to mask it out. So now if you still need to mess around with that after it's masked, you can still resize that. You'll want to come over here in your layers panel, click this this drop down for the folder, and all we really want is the bitmap here, even though it's not necessarily a bitmap. And I'll hold down Shift, and you see that I have the option to keep resizing a bit. You can use your arrow keys to move it over. What you don't want to do is start dragging it down, because then you're going to be able to start seeing what's behind it. So I want that right on top, unless you get a different image. So we'll use that there. Alright, now one more important trait that this photo image has is that, so you're seeing that this is blending in with that white background, and over here it's not necessarily. And the reason that is because there's a very subtle drop shadow here. And the way that you can get that is, let's go ahead and select this here, and I'm going to click the plus sign next to shadows. That's what we want. Now we don't want that bold of a shadow. We actually want this to be dissipated a bit and kind of faded, just very, very subtle. So I'm going to start playing around with this, and let's bump this up to maybe a 3 over here for the X value. For the Y, I'm going to bump that up to a 3 as well. So now for the X value, just to give you a little bit of info on that, the more that I grow the X value, and let me click off of it, the more that I increase the X value, it's going to push this from the left to the right. So the shadow is going to push to the right the more that I increase this value. Alright, so I'll bump that back down to 3. For the Y value, Same deal, but it's going to go from the top down. So the more I increase this value, it's going to push it downwards. So I'll bump that back to 3. Same deal. Now if you start going the other way and bring this into a minus value, it'll just go the opposite way. So now for blur, let's go ahead and blur this out a bit. And I want to blur it to the point where it's going to be really, really subtle. So something like that. And I might want to bring these back a little bit, maybe to a 2, just so they're kind of subtle. And I like the amount of space that we have here, but that's still a little bit harsh. I want it just a little more subtle. So one way I can go about that is click into the color here, and let's drop down the alpha here. So bottom right, I'm going to click and drag. I've got my 2 little double arrows, and I can just click from here, drag that over to drop that down a bit, and you'll see that this starts to go away. If I bring it up, you're going to see more of a harsh shadow there, but what I want is less. So let's drop that down just a little bit. Let's go to maybe 24, and I think I'm happy with that. Alright, there we go. I feel like we've done enough damage for now. It gets pretty intense when you get into the details, and it does tend to run a little bit long. So I'm going to call that it for now, and then we'll continue on with a couple more of the design elements in the next video. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.